let's go home. So, there's this, oh, somebody's backing it. Okay, go ahead. So there's this story, I guess yesterday, if you follow social media, everybody today is laughing at Rachel Maddow. Because I guess Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, she's this Rhodes Scholar on MSNBC. She has a show, I think at 9 o'clock, called The Rachel Maddow Show. I used to watch her religiously back when I was a crazy liberal. Now I'm just a normal liberal, or a classic liberal. But I used to watch her religiously, and she had a show on last night, and she tweeted out in the afternoon, you know, that she had Donald Trump's tax returns from 2005, which I'm like, what big deal? Didn't they already release that during the campaign? Like, wasn't this information out during the campaign? This is what was in the back of my head, but she's making out like this huge revelation, and she'll have, you know, I guess some journalist got mailed the first 2 pages of Donald Trump's 1040 from 2005. And so it was just like Rachel Maddow is talking about this thing's going to be a huge revelation. She doesn't know the content of it, or maybe she did know the content of it. And if she did know the content of it, what's the big point of it? Because all it showed was that he made a pile of money in 2005, 150 million or something, and he paid like $38 million in taxes all told. What was the big deal? He didn't dodge his taxes. He didn't pay an extraordinarily low rate. As a matter of fact, I think everybody today is talking about how he paid an effective rate of like 24.5% or 25% or something in taxes for that year. Whereas, you know, other people like Bernie Sanders, for instance, paid an effective income tax rate of 13%. Now, Bernie Sanders made a lot less than Donald Trump, and the United States does have a progressive tax system. But still, by any measure, Bernie Sanders made a hell of a lot more money than your average person. And for doing what? For being a senator. And he only paid a rate of 13%. So this should put an end to the whole tax. You know, release your tax returns, because forever they've been talking, Trump has to release his tax returns. We need to see, you know, what's in his taxes, because for all we know, he's been influenced by Russia and all this sort of crap. But because this was such a nothing burger, to use that phrase, and I think I'm going to get really sick of that phrase very quickly, to turn this story that Maddow put out as being this huge revelation, exclusive, big deal, woobity woo, to whenever anybody brings up taxes again, they're just going to snicker at this incident and go, you had a story that wasn't a story. You had fake news. It wasn't news. Nothing was newsworthy. Oh, look, Donald Trump made money and paid taxes on it, like everybody else. You know, and even other contemporaries in the mainstream media, you know, ones who generally aren't very forgiving of Trump and are pretty hard on him. Even they're saying this was a BS story. This was bullshit, and you know, this is a nothing burger again. So I don't think they're going to be going down that road anymore with the whole taxes thing, because now it's 2005, but it shows that, you know, this narrative that they were putting out through the campaign, that Hillary Clinton herself was putting out, you know, that Donald Trump doesn't pay taxes. We know that because he hasn't released his taxes, and that's why he's not releasing his taxes, because he doesn't want everybody to know that he doesn't pay anything in taxes. Well, it turns out he does pay quite a bit in taxes. And this notion that he hasn't paid taxes in 20 years or whatever, this is what they were trying to spin back during the campaign. He hasn't paid taxes in 20 years. That's why he won't release his returns. Fake news, right? Obviously, this reveals that it's fake news. But the big thing is, or not, it's not even a big thing, but a funny thing is that I guess the producers at MSNBC, before this aired, contacted the White House and told them of what they discovered, and they wanted verification that the 1040, so they faxed the 1040 over to the White House to get verification from Trump or one of his surrogates or one of his people that these two 1040 forms, these 2 pages of his 1040 from 2005 were actually legit. And I guess the White House confirmed back, yep, they're legit. And then before the show at 9 o'clock, Trump, the White House releases a statement saying, here's what we paid in 2005, here's what we earned in 2005, and here's what we paid in 2005. We paid an effective tax rate of this, blah, 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 blah. And basically scooped Maddow before she could even release it. And I remember when I read Maddow's tweet on Twitter, and it's not that I follow Maddow, but somebody, I guess, who I do follow did. Everybody's like, it's from 2005, who cares? Like, it's from like over a decade ago. Who gives a rat's ass what he did over a decade ago? I mean, if him saying grab her by the pussy 5 years ago didn't ruin his chances of becoming president, what do you think, now that he is president, what do you think tax returns from over 10 years ago are going to do to his presidency? It's a load of horse shit. Anyway, I feel bad for Maddow because this isn't going to end her career. They're so insulated over there at MSNBC. But, you know, it just pokes a hole in her legitimacy as a serious news presenter, I guess, or subject presenter on MSNBC. But I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand agenda-driven news media trying to pass itself off as being, you know, real news. MSNBC's terrible for a couple of their presenters. For instance, Melissa Harris Perry. She's been let go from the cable network now because she went full SJW and started talking about, I don't know, I can't remember what the incident was, but some guy on her show said something about hardworking Americans, and she alluded to slavery. She started talking about, you know, she said, I feel you, I understand about hard work. I think they said, yeah, I think it was Paul Ryan's one of the hardest working guys in Washington. That was the quote. That was what the person on her show said. And she came back with this, I gotta stop you, because I feel you, you know, that people work hard, but nobody works hard in comparison to what slaves did. What the fuck does slavery have to do with that? They're talking about, you know, a person in politics working hard in Washington. How does that relate at all to slavery? She had this crazy, you know, Tumblr moment. It's like she shitposted on her own fucking show. It was ridiculous. And then, you know, so they let her go ultimately. And then on Morning Joe, if you ever watch Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough's probably the only, you know, Republican-leaning presenter on MSNBC. I wouldn't even call him a Republican anymore. He's just because of, you know, he's basically gone over to the other side. But Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe has his partner his co-presenter, Mika Brzezinski, or Micah, or whatever the hell her name is. I think it's Mika. Anyway, like a week or so ago, she starts talking about, after, you know, Trump started talking about the wiretapping and that sort of thing, she starts talking about how, you know, she had hope and now she doesn't. Her mind was open and now it's closed. This is a failed presidency and a fake presidency. And she's like crying. She's like crying on TV. And I get that the show format is one where, you know, talking heads come on and they give their take on, you know, recent events in politics. That's the whole thing, right? That's what Morning Joe's all about. Recent events in Washington, recent events in, you know, politics and nationwide politics and that kind of thing. And they talk about it. And occasionally they get things right. Occasionally Joe Scarborough has like a little nugget of sanity on an otherwise lunatic cable news network. So she starts basically almost crying about the whole thing. And I'm like, you stupid cow. Like, have some dignity, for crying out loud. It's one thing to have a political leaning. It's one thing even to show your bias in your reporting or in your analysis. That's one thing. But what she was doing on the Morning Joe show, and Joe Scarborough wasn't on the show that time. He was, I guess, Skyping in from somewhere. So she was basically holding the studio down. For you to act like a complete basket case while you're hosting a show, that would be, if I were like the executive producer of you know, news or content at MSNBC, I'd ask for a resignation. But then, you know, and that has nothing to do with my politics. That has nothing to do with my, you know, my opinion being in opposition to her opinion. It's the way in which it's her specific take and the way in which she presented her take to the audience. And it's language like that, like insane rhetoric like that legitimizes people acting like absolute fucking retards in the street. It legitimizes people, you know, dropping their pants and defecating on Trump signs in the street and setting fire to flags and setting fire to cars and just being complete fucking morons. When legitimate news anchors and presenters, you know, act like Walter Cronkite did after Kennedy was shot, you know, let their emotions get the better of them on TV over something so insignificant as what the president tweeted out. For them to get so emotionally caught up and have it displayed on the channel, it completely undermines their credibility as journalists. Journalists are supposed to be serious and stoic and present the facts and present reasonable analysis of facts and present, you know, opposing viewpoints by way of, you know, opposition surrogates or opposition pundits, right? That's how you do it. But when you're the host and you're going on there, can you imagine William F. Buckley breaking down and fucking crying when he was talking to Milton Friedman or Thomas Sowell? Could you imagine that? Like, I mean, even Barbara Walters, who, you know, clearly has a bias in her, or has a political leaning in her reporting, she at the very least behaved like a fucking journalist. Mika Brzezinski's a clown. Like Don Lemon's a fucking clown. Anyway. Like Jake Tapper's a clown. And oh, get this. Again, speaking of journalism, Jake Tapper, Katie Tur, and who else? Can't remember who else. Someone else. Shit. I wish I could remember. Anyway, they were awarded with the Walter Cronkite Award for excellence in journalism. Can you fucking believe that? Katie Tur is a clown. Jake Tapper is a juggling clown. He's ridiculous. And they were awarded with the Walter Cronkite Award for excellence in journalism. Walter Cronkite would be fucking turning over in his grave if he found that out. And Walter Cronkite was a liberal. And he was pro-globalism, and he was, but he was at the very least, a serious fucking journalist. I guess maybe I should give these people some slack. I mean, can I really expect them to be serious journalists when they have to cover a president that, by their account, by their reckoning, is not a serious president? Anyway, I don't know. It's a different worldview, I guess. I think journalists today imagine themselves to be more serious and more important and more influential than they are. It's funny, I saw a little snippet of George W. Bush in an interview with Matt Lauer, I guess from the weekend. And Matt Lauer asked him some question pertaining to, social media and how it's changed the coverage of presidential politics and Washington politics. And he asked him, could you ever imagine, your presidency being or tweeting during your presidency the way that, Donald Trump does? And Bush was very affable, and I think he made Matt Lauer feel like shit, and you could kind of see it in his eyes. He said, well, it's a lot different then. You guys were much more relevant then. Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah, it's true. I think they see the writing on the wall, right? I think they're starting, and I think that's why they become so spastic over everything. They see the writing on the wall. They're irrelevant. Social media, internet, news, alternative media, they got your number. And it's not through lack of trying by the big social media organizations like Twitter and Facebook, but the actual message is still getting out there. I found myself shadow banned on Twitter. I've got I don't know, a lot of followers. I got 159 followers, but I'll go and I'll check, tweets that I put out, and I'll see that it was seen 11 times. If I've got 159 followers, and I see that those 159 followers, a good chunk of them, are active, why is it something that I tweet out is only being seen 11 times? Anyway, I don't claim to understand how Twitter works on the deeper end of things, but anyway, that's it. I'm home. I don't know if I'm gonna upload this, but if I do and you like it, you can hit like and subscribe. I don't know. Thanks a lot, and take care.